Bienvenue à cette conférence de presse pour faire...
Welcome to this press conference to talk about the situation in Quebec concerning COVID-19. The Premier of Quebec, Mr. François Legault, is today together with the Minister of Health and Social Services, Ms. Danielle McCann, as well as the National Director of Public Health of Quebec, Dr. Horacio Arruda. Mr. Premier? Yes, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. We are now entering today into a new step in this fight against coronavirus. We have every reason to believe that there is starting to have community transmission. You will see the number of cases is increasing quickly, and it is important to specify it in order to better follow in real time the number of cases. We have chosen to include the cases that we call probable cases in the total of the number of people who are infected. So that means that there is an increase today, but a part of that increase does come from a change in the method in order to better reflect more quickly the reality, since it is changing very quickly. So the numbers of the past day, we now have 628 cases of people infected, an increase of 409. 45 people are being hospitalized. There's an increase of 21 people. 20 people are in intensive care. That is an increase of 7, and we are still at 4 deaths, so no increases in the number of deaths. We have 1,900 people who are awaiting results for tests and 11,200 who have received a negative test. Maybe one point on the number of tests and the number of cases. One must be prudent when one compares to other provinces or other countries for various reasons. First, in Quebec, we have made the choice up until now to concentrate on testing only those people who had traveled and had symptoms. There are countries and provinces that took different approaches. We believe, of course, that it was, according to us, the people who were most at risk, and that explains certain of those differences. Another thing that is important to keep in mind when we compare ourselves to other provinces particularly is that we don't have the same date for March break. We know that during March break there are many people who travel. So about 2 weeks ago we had a lot of people coming back from March break, more here in Quebec than elsewhere. So that is also another explanation, and one must be prudent therefore. While making comparisons, we have to take this data into account. Now, as I was saying, we are entering a new phase, a more critical phase, and it is now time to add measures in order to limit contagion. So today I have taken the decision to close all businesses and stores except for essential services until the 13th of April. So we have a situation where in effect, Quebec is going to be on pause for 3 weeks, and that is important to give ourselves every opportunity of reducing contagion of the virus. It's important to take that decision, which is important and difficult, but it is necessary. So what does that mean concretely? We're asking all businesses, all stores to close at the latest tomorrow evening at midnight, but all stores and companies that can do so as of today, I would ask you to do so. I can understand that for certain companies it will be difficult to do it before tomorrow evening at midnight, but the quicker it is done, the better, and at the latest it has to be tomorrow at midnight. It'll be forbidden to be open after. Now, the list of essential services. We are going to be emitting a list of essential services that is going to be updated regularly, but we can already tell you that, of course, all grocery stores, all pharmacies, the entire food supply chain, including transportation of food stuff, firefighters, police officers, of course the health network, all those essential services are going to remain open. And I want to take this opportunity right away to thank those people that will allow us to continue functioning in the next few weeks. Thank you very much. We need you. Now, a word on residences for the elderly and nursing homes. We know, and we've said it often, people 70 years and over, if they catch the virus, they have a higher risk of going through serious consequences. Of course, when we look at residences and nursing homes where there are many elderly people, as was the case in La Valtrie, it is important that the virus does not enter those homes. We have to do everything. Yesterday I spoke with owners of these nursing homes and residences, and we have a phenomenon right now where most of the people who live in those residences no longer go out, but there's a small minority that continues going out, and they worry everybody else who lives in those residences. So that is why we decided today to add a new guideline where we ask every person in those residences to no longer go out except with supervision and in exceptional cases. I know that it's a hard measure, but this measure is necessary because the last thing that we want in Quebec is that the virus enters in those residences and homes. That is what is the most dangerous. That is what could have the most disastrous consequences. But I want us to understand things. The people who are 70 and over are not at higher risk of spreading the virus than younger people, whether you're 15 or 40 or 85. We can all spread the virus. I'm hearing certain people say, well, I'm not at risk. Listen, don't look at others. Look at yourself. Everybody has to respect the guidelines, regardless of your age. So let us be clear. Apart for essential services, we are putting Quebec on hold. That is, all Quebecers who are not in essential services, please, you have to remain home. Of course, I do need the younger people to go help the older people, to go help handicapped people, to go help community organizations that are taking care of the most vulnerable people. So it is important to show a lot of solidarity to your neighbors, your families, the organizations that work in your communities and neighborhoods. So those who don't have symptoms and who are younger, please go offer your services in order to help so that our elderly, for example, and others receive all the food that they need without being forced to go out. And listen, in the course of the next few weeks, it will be important to have solidarity and to be courageous. And I know that Quebecers are people who are capable of acting with solidarity and courageous. So I would ask you, stay home, except to go help those people who are vulnerable or to go render essential services. So I would add, in ending, the faster we limit contacts, the faster we'll limit contagion. The more lives we'll have saved, and the faster we'll be able to get back to a normal life. So I know that Quebecers are very close to one another, and it's important as a people that we collaborate, that everybody collaborate. I ask all Quebecers to collaborate, and I need you all, and I have confidence that in the next few weeks we'll be able to get through this situation, which is difficult. I thank you. A word in English?
A few words in English. We can see today an important increase in the number of cases. So it's time for everybody to follow the public health instructions. It's time also for the government to act in a decisive manner. We must put Quebec on pause until Easter for a possible restart on April 13. So at midnight tomorrow, every non-essential economic activities must stop. Those who can close now, please do it. We will publish a list of what will remain open, but I can confirm it will, of course, include groceries and pharmacies. So it's a time to unite more than ever.
Alors, pour la période des questions, en vous limitant à une question, une sous-question, on va commencer avec Tommy.
Question period.
Monsieur le Premier ministre.
Mr. Premier, first, what are the measures that will be taken in order to have the decision that you're taking today be respected of closing all businesses and stores? And are you going to ask the federal government in these circumstances to apply the Act on emergency measures? Right now, we are staying with the same approach that we've had since the beginning. That is to say that we have to depend on Quebecers' good faith and goodwill. So yes, we have all sorts of powers, and even the federal government could have all sorts of powers and require all sorts of things of police officers. But if we want things to work, we have to have the collaboration and the goodwill of everybody. So that is what we are basing ourselves on. For example, when I say stores, non-essential stores and business have to close tomorrow at midnight, that is to give the opportunity to those who need a bit of time. But if you can do it now, this afternoon, tonight, do it immediately. So there has to be as little physical contact as possible. We'll never be able to check that with police officers. We'll never be able to make sure that it's done everywhere in Quebec. So we have to count people's goodwill. And if it is necessary, we do have the powers to constrain people, but I do not wish to use those powers as much as possible. Dr. Arruda, you had indicated to us in the course of the past few days that in order to measure the efficacy or the impact of the confinement measures, we had to wait 10 days. We are at the 10th day. On the projection curve that you had made, where are we at? Should we have to worry about this increase, particularly in intensive care? Well, you have to understand that what we see right now, what we're seeing right now is what we expected to see. And I'm saying it once again, it is not time to stop. And I've said it often so that Quebecers understand. I don't want to scare people, but it is a question of life or death. Because it truly is. Right now what is happening is that with the increase in screening tests that we've made, and there's been a lot in the past few days, we have increased the number of cases. So now we're doing the analysis to know what category has been increased, etc. But already we are making decisions that are very important right now compared to what was taken.
It's still on time and on track and everything.
Capacity and others. However, we have to, and I must say it, it's not because we're taking these measures that you shouldn't collaborate with public health. The case of public health, the specific outbreaks in specific places where there's been places, stories of weddings, of residential homes, we're applying all measures. Let's not stop that part of the investigation, which is very important. And now we're adding an extra measure, which is going to force, in my opinion, social distancing. It is not time to, have parties at home because you're not at work. And we're going to be looking over the next few days how things are done. We're not worried of the situation. We had told you that we were going to be testing a lot. That's what we've done. We even had we privilege action to statistics because that is what is important, is acting. And right now we're taking the necessary measures that certain countries took, but completely at a different stage as ours. We're not at all overwhelmed in our health system. We're even trying to, get some time, put time on our sides to go get supplies and negotiate supplies. If we have to build things in Quebec, we'll do so. But I would tell you that right now, all of our authorities of public health, most advisors, when we look at the articles that are being published everywhere, we are using the best practices that have been recommended as such, and it takes courage to do so. But I believe that it is a question that, when we see one another again in 3 or 4 weeks, we'll be able to say, and what I'm saying is that what we said before, travelers that are going to be coming back from the outside, they really have to isolate themselves for 14 days. If we compare ourselves to Ontario as well, our March break was before we closed international flights, and that is what is making it that right now we are getting the tail end of the March break. But if you're coming back from traveling, if you have symptoms and you weren't traveling, you didn't say it because you were scared, please give the right information. It's not the time to lie. It is not the time. It's a question of death, life or death, and the measures that we've put, that we've set up. Thank goodness, Quebecers are close-knit, and without, disclosing the status to others, they'll tell other people, hey, you just came back from a trip. Why are you walking around? This is the kind of thing that we'll be doing together, and we'll constrain people when it's necessary. But if we constrain people, we won't have collaboration. I prefer that people understand what we're doing and why we're doing it as such, because we are still in our scenarios, and we knew that one day we would get to that, taking into account the new practices and what we are reading in the literature by the most important advisors. The exclusion and closure of all businesses, does that include the construction industry and the aluminum plants? Because aluminum plants have a specific situation. They can't just close down the machines. We know the principle. Does that touch upon these 2 industries? Yes, it does it does affect aluminum plants. It does touch construction sites. That's why we're saying midnight tomorrow. We may have exceptions. I also don't want to create catastrophes, of course. But it includes all products that are manufactured that are not essential. Companies that produce medical equipment, well, we need for these to remain open. But the ones that fabricate aluminum, cars or planes, they will be closed. The other question that I wanted to ask you is because the 1st of July is coming up, there's going to be people moving, and we know how that works. In Quebec, we are forced to move on the 1st of July, and there are people who are actively looking for apartments right now. Is it going to be allowed to visit apartments? Because now we're really talking about bringing people inside of other people's homes. Listen, right now we are putting Quebec on hold for 3 weeks until the 13th of April. So there is a period of time between the 13th of April and the 1st of July. We are very conscious that this is a specific issue, the question of people moving. And we do have a team that is working on that. But of course, we are going to start by getting through the next 3 weeks.
Oui, bonjour. J'aimerais être.
I would like to be sure that I've understood the significance of the increase in the number of cases that you've talked about today. To what extent can it be the result of the inefficacy of the measures taken up until now, or rather just it's difficult to know what is happening and why? To what extent is that indicator in the number of cases that we've been following from day to day? How well does it really give us a fair portrait of the situation? I'm going to let Dr. Arruda complete. But of course, it's been days that I've been also asking myself that question. What I've understood is that we have chosen, up until today, to concentrate on the people who have symptoms and who traveled. There are other places where they tested everybody with symptoms. Concentrating ourselves on people who both traveled and had symptoms, the probability of finding cases was higher. So you have to take that into account. The other thing that has to be taken into account is our spring break. Our spring break just took place at a bad moment. A lot of people went down south. A lot of people went on vacation in foreign lands. And in other countries is where there was a problem and a higher chance of catching the virus. It wasn't the case in Ontario, for example. Their spring break is later, so they were able to save that part. So that has to be taken into account. Of course, it's also not an exact science, all of this. And I will let Dr. Arruda complete. Well, you have to understand that between what people are doing and that they're saying that there's a test and what they're doing in the field, there's a difference in terms of protocol and application. There are factors that are linked to our epidemiological situation in particular, and also the countries that are touched. In British Columbia, it was China, a lot of people who came in. For us, it's Cuba, the South, Italy, France. So we have a historical. When you look at the list of the countries, we were exposed to a lot of different ones. There's a mix of all that. If you allow me, we've increased the screening tests, that's clear, and we were expecting to see those numbers go up significantly. And after that, you have to look at them per territory. Let's take one example. We are starting to see community transmission, I believe, but in the majority of cases, 40, 60% of cases, they are still associated to travel. That is to say that the virus came into a family and went into a specific place because somebody went to travel and introduced the virus. That part, as we, end the traveling as when people isolate themselves when they come back from traveling, that is going to be less important. So now we're going to have a shift in the type of introduction. And it's very difficult to give you so much specific information, but it's a mix of the exposure factor of Quebec linked with the virus coming from the outside. And that was because of spring break. And also the change in strategy of testing and the number of screening tests. It's only after a certain amount of time that we'll be able to have a stable number, because we could have an increase like this in the curve and then restabilize it like this, because the 3 or 4 days of delay came and canceled out the potential clinical effect or inclination effect. And I can tell you that people who follow those and epidemiological experts are telling us that they're very optimistic according to what is happening in Quebec, and I'm not the one who says it. This is an epidemiologist who said it on the radio. So we work with weak, medium, high scenarios, and we always function by saying it's going to be worse than what it is in order to give ourselves leeway and give ourselves time. Another thing, too, is that when we detect somebody who is positive, we do a lot of work in order to be able to meet every single other person that came into contact with that person, including, somebody who might have used their phone. And there may be cases, and this is anecdotal, but it might be important, of a case, I won't tell you, a marriage, 350 people. The woman getting married and one of the parents, they were infected. So that means that there are 350 people that we have to test and that perhaps have a higher risk than the average, and we did a lot of work on that. So when we find one infected person, we make sure to ask a lot of questions on who that person met in the previous days and to test those people. So do all the provinces do that? Well, it's difficult to know to what extent that's also being done elsewhere. Mr. Premier, later on today, you're going to talk with your counterparts in other provinces and Mr. Trudeau. Mr. Trudeau this morning said that he wanted to question the premiers on the pertinence and opportunity of closing down the province's borders. What are you going to be telling him about this, and what specifically are you going to tell him about the Emergency Measures Act? Do you wish for him to apply it? Because he also will be asking the Premier's questions on that. Okay, two things. First of all, displacements. We've already said it. We want people to move around as little as possible from one region to another within Quebec. So, of course, starting to have people that come from other provinces is not ideal. But there is a particular situation in the Gatineau, Ottawa. This is a community which is basically the same community. And a part of the care, the health care, in certain cases are in Ottawa for people who are in Gatineau. So we have to be prudent with that area. At 5:30 at the meeting, I asked the 1520 team working on our committee, and the priority of priorities is to get the swabs. So the material for the screening test. Now we have enough for the next few weeks, but of course it is going to accelerate. And so we need Ottawa to make efforts in order to have that testing material, among other things. We're pretty comfortable with masks, with ventilators, but the swabs, There are methods that are being tested right now. Could we use just something else, for example, like a little stick? But many people are worried with the number of swabs in the short term, or in the middle term. What are you expecting on the part of the media? The news services. Can you confirm to us that we're an essential service? Absolutely, absolutely. The media are an essential service. Communications in the broad sense of the term, telephone, everything having to do with computers, that's an essential service. It is important to continue informing people, to continue communicating. So yes, right now, there is a small group that is specifically looking at how we can help out the media to continue their work so that we can continue informing the population correctly. If you'll allow me, a good example today, we are announcing to you today that there's a guide for self-care, which is on the side of the ministry. So we would like for the media to also promote that. This is a self-care guide that is very complete, that explains what COVID-19 is, what one must do as prevention, what to do if one has symptoms. All the information is there. So that is truly very important. It's important to talk about it to people. It's on our website right now, and we'll see whether we can find modalities for people who don't have Wi-Fi. We are studying that. I would also say that I wish to thank, because we really are totally reorganizing the social services and health networks. And I thank people every time we have a press conference, and now I would like to thank the administrators, because they're working really hard, like everyone else, social workers as well. Everybody working in the psychosocial workers, that's an entire plan to be able to meet or stay in contact with people at a time when everybody is more anxious. And I'll just give you an example. The Régie d'assurance maladie of Quebec, a lot of work being done there right now. So what I'm telling you today is that the network is preparing itself, and it's very, very active. And right now we have freed up 6,000 beds. We had announced that to you only a few days ago. Well, now they have been freed up. And in that, there are also many intensive care beds. And we are making sure that all possible services are given over the phone, teleconsultations, so that people don't have to move around. And we have a whole array of services as well, as I was telling you, for people who are going through anguish and who are distressed. We have social workers, and if we don't have anybody, we have a waiting list, and they will be called. And if you have a problem, you can also call CLSC. So all of this reorganization, I want to thank people who are doing all the work to do this. I want to reiterate what Danielle just said. She just said we have 6,000 beds available. But on top of that, we have people who are very ingenious, who are very inventive, who are allowing us to have, if necessary, to be able to use, for example, the Hôtel Dieu, the Notre Dame hospitals. So hospitals that were in the former CHUM who are going to be set up in order to be able to receive people. So there are people who are doing a lot more than the work that is in their job descriptions, amongst other administrators and managers in the health network, to whom I really wish to send a warm, heartfelt thanks. I do population and medicine, so, that's one of the ways that I can talk to people is through you. And I would like to tell you that one of the important elements, we don't do this kind of interventions for fun. It's this, we believe it. We believe it as the best way, the best practice. And you are all my carrier pigeons sending the disease, sending the information. You can become a vector of somebody else's death without knowing it. That is why we're telling you to isolate ourselves. And don't forget, wash your hands. It's not because we're setting up measures that we have to decrease our hygiene. You never know who might be the person who might be contaminating. And now it's not going to be just people traveling from the outside. If you came back from traveling outside, don't go and show your pictures around elsewhere. Don't invite people over to your home and have family parties. It's very worrisome. We don't know what people can have caught. So remain isolated for 14 days. And also what I want to say is let's find the means to go through this experience in peace and in calm. There are very beautiful initiatives of artists and others that are allowing us to listen to music. People are being, stand-up comedian are making people laugh, which, makes us feel good, but respect those measures of distancing. The success of our interventions is going to depend to what extent the Quebec population is going to accept this prescription. If we give you antibiotics for 10 days and you only take 5 days, that's going to have perverse effects. So if we tell you to stay home, stay home. If we tell you not to go from one region to another, to not travel from Quebec to Montreal if it's not essential, don't do it. Every gesture like that, accumulated all together, is going to make it that we can get there. So to answer your question from before, there isn't just one cause. It's multiple causes and situations. And we, the public health teams, are going to be working to investigate each and every one of the cases, each story of marriages and all that. And when we told you no funerals, no weddings, it's not because we don't find that they're important. It's that this situation where people don't know that they're ill and who are ill are contaminating others. And if you are ill, please say so. And if you don't have many symptoms, stay home. You're going to cure yourself on your own, but don't go contaminate others. Thank you. Thank you for transmitting this message. In answering my question, you refer to the intensive care beds, so I'll continue on that. We're looking right now, there are 45 people who are hospitalized, 20 you said in intensive care. Yesterday, the portrait was similar to that. Does that mean that about 50% of people who are hospitalized will at some point go through intensive care? Not necessarily, no. The portrait, and Dr. Ruda will surely want to say something on that. The portrait is changing every day. Don't base yourself on what is happening right now because it is not representative of what might take place in the future. And we had statistics at the beginning that normally it's 15% of people who are affected who will be hospitalized, but we don't know how many people are affected necessarily because there are people who have not been tested and who are probably infected right now. And we're saying that it's about 5% as far as intensive care is concerned. So do you see, it does not concord, and that is normal because we are at the beginning of the situation. So we can't make that deduction. Dr. Arruda, I have nothing to add. You said it very well. So we'll continue with email questions. A total confinement, as is being done in France, is that being excluded? And should Quebecers accept that it is what is coming in the next few days? Well, that's pretty much what we're announcing today. What we're saying is confinement except for essential services. So that's pretty much it. That's where we're at. Police officers are probably going to be overwhelmed pretty quickly because of this increase in the confinement measures. Might you call upon the army in the future to help them out and apply the directives? We're not there at all. So there are some grocery stores that are thinking of opening specifically at times only for people 70 and over. Is that a good idea? The question is still about gathering people and is there social distancing. If it's being done and that people are one behind the other stuck together and there's no social distancing at the grocery store, that's not a good idea. But if it is done adequately, and that's where it becomes useful to answer all questions, don't forget, people have to stay at least 1 meter, preferably 2 apart from one another. And people who are incubating or have symptoms and they're thinking, oh, it's okay, I'm going to go out anyway. No, don't go out. It's all of these things that have been taken into account. But I'll tell you quite honestly, more and more, and we'll be seeing it, we're going to have to find ways of moving merchandise to people rather than letting them come out, particularly in residential homes for the elderly, because we don't want people to go out to do their groceries. They're going to be managed by people who are going to come and bring them the services so that they don't go elsewhere, catching it and reintroducing it, because that's what's happening right now. People are going to be scared of their neighbors. Do you understand? We can't fall into that paranoia and social psychosis. Every situation has to be looked at. And that is what this break will allow us to see as well, how people will get organized because it's going very quickly. And so it can be done, but it can also not be done properly. And that's what we have to be able to see. And if there's an alternative to delivering, or more people can go and deliver because now they don't have enough people to deliver. If more people go and help to deliver at home, well, we just fix the problem. You were talking about paranoia, the psychological impact. It's going to be even bigger in the next few days. Well, I think that facing in front of the cases that are increasing, the reaction is normal. It's normal to be scared and of panicking, but the best reaction is to know what should I do and what should you do? Well, that is exactly what we're recommending to you, because even this virus is not going to get to your home through your window. So if you stay inside, we knew that there were going to be cases. Look at what is happening in the world. It was impossible that Quebec was going to, be saved from that. So now that we have to do is to tell you what we are telling you to do. It is not time to panic, but we understand that people are scared. You have to support people who are scared. The elderly who are inside, who are thinking, what's happening? Well, I also don't have contact with my family every day. We don't see one another to protect ourselves. My spouse is in Montreal. We're not going to see one another anymore because I'm traveling around. But anyway, by doing that, we are doing something. So the more you do this, the less time it's going to take and the faster we're going to get back on track as a society. And at the same time, there's the action centers for volunteers that are being mobilized in each territory of Quebec. To give that example of things being done, they're helping out the elderly. So there are examples like that everywhere in Quebec, and that is becoming broader in scope. So there is a phenomenon that is going on, which is very important, a phenomenon of solidarity, parallel with a situation that is difficult to get through. So I think that this has to be kept in mind as well. I just want to say one last word. Ideally, it's better that people 70 and over do not go and do their own groceries. Hello, Mr. Premier. Despite the closure of businesses announced today, there are still clerks in grocery stores, pharmacists that are going to have to remain at work. What is the government telling them to reassure them? They are scared of catching COVID-19. They're going to continue working up until today unless you announce the opposite. They cannot send their children to those daycare centers. What can you tell those people? Okay, first, take all the precautions that the Dr. Ruda has mentioned, that is to say, keep 1 or 2 meters between yourself and the clients that are coming to see you. Secondly, wash your hands regularly. Now, as far as daycare services are concerned, for the time being, it's not applicable to those people, but we're not excluding it. It is part of the discussions that we are having internally of the evaluation, because, of course, if we are adding daycare for other people, it presupposes to have more educators who could also think, well, am I at risk or not with children? So once again, it's we have the balance of inconveniences. So we are examining that situation, that request of potentially doing that as well for public transportation. The companies that will not appear on the list of essential services and who have supported themselves since the beginning of the pandemic in great part or even totally on working from home, are they going to be able to continue their activities? That is part, in fact, of it is the ideal situation. So, of course, if we are able to function by working from home, it's ideal as long as it does not bring to the main place of the business the obligation of keeping people at work if it is not an essential activity. So we can't just work from home. I'm thinking about the entire situation concerning, the banks and caisse. We need to continue, of course, to be able to get money to pay for those services. There is a part of the work that can be done working from home, and there is a part that must be done at the bank's headquarters or the caisse's headquarters. So what is essential? What is not essential? That is why, as we go along, we're going to be bringing as many details on, for example, what work from home must be continued and what must not. I understand that there will be a list that will be published, and of course our Quebecers looking at this and thinking, what is going to happen with my job? Just to understand correctly, I know that yesterday you said that it's important that restaurants keep takeout services because it's important to nourish people. Do they have to close? What is going to happen to people? They won't get any payment anymore until April. Well, there are measures for payment. Amongst others, the federal government that is opening unemployment insurance to autonomous workers. So it is important, in fact, that people be able to have money. It's also important to be able to feed the population. So for the time being, takeouts, we believe that it's a good idea to keep them open. But we have to have people to deliver. We have to be able to respect all the guidelines. Mr. Arruda, the national media numbers in Italy, about 8.5% of cases of COVID-19 are healthcare workers. In Spain, I think it's almost 12%. Are you expecting the same proportion in Quebec? Well, listen, it would be possible if we have the same experience. It's going to depend on the measures, protective measures that we're going to set up and to what extent people are going to be assiduous. What happened in other countries that healthcare workers were infected when not many things were known, but it's still known, with the break in protection. But we're going to do everything so that people who are potentially infected are going to be brought to a specific area. But it is a very important concern, and we're going to be following who are the people who are being infected. And if it's healthcare workers, in what context? Healthcare workers or any other essential worker, because it's important. It can allow us to say, well, there is a problem in the understanding or the application of measures. But to date, our objective, you'll understand, our guardian angels, as we have called them, and essential services, we're going to need them to the maximum. So we're going to do everything to protect them. And that also, if you'll allow me, this break is also going to allow us to rechannel things to be able to get more material, masks, gloves, etc. But if you're telling me that, asking me to say that no health worker is going to be getting infected, I think that's utopic. But these are not people at high risk, however, as such. But that is futurology. But everything is being set up to protect our workers. The Premier said it earlier on. The masks, we have what is needed. In the short term and the middle term, we have what is needed in terms of masks and the visors and the gowns. So everything is set up. The protocols are there. English.
Premier Legault, you're announcing today a partial lockdown of the province of Quebec. You can feel lots of tensions when you walk on the street, when you walk in the park. How are you going to take Quebecers how are you going to take them there in this partial lockdown? How are you going to basically convince them that things will get better as anxiety is just going up and up?
Yeah. In doing the lockdown today for 3 weeks, we put chances on our side that it goes better after. So I think that in doing more than less, it's helping everybody. People must feel that we're taking the right decisions to make sure that as least as possible there will continue to be transmission between people. Because like Dr. Arruda is saying very often, it won't come from anywhere else than somebody else if you get the virus. So if you're alone at home, there's no risk. So it's important to say that. And people that were continuing to work, but they must feel better now to be at home. So what will be important in the next few weeks is to have the support of all the people working in essential services, like pharmacies, like groceries. It's important that we continue to give those services. It's important that we have the firefighters, the police people. So these will be the one that may be with some stress, but people at home, they must not have stress.
Mr. Arruda, about the fact that now you're including the probable, like presumed cases, and now we reached more than 600 cases. What people should understand at home from this race today?
This race today was there. It's normal. We knew we were going to do that. I will explain it why. Do you remember when we test cases in Quebec and then we send the lab to Winnipeg? We had to confirm cases only when Winnipeg, the second test was positive. The same thing happens from our laboratory of province to the regional ones. We had to make validation of the quality of tests because we want to make sure when you implement in a new sector, a new test, that the results is going to be okay. Imagine if there is a mistake or a problem and 50% of cases are said you are not diseased or you are diseased and you don't have the disease. So it's why we kept those data here. We act on it. The public health persons in the regions act on it, but it was not statistically a good test. When we add almost all the labs have a 100% note, we decided to put those cases on this day. It was decided yesterday. And in fact, I would tell you, perhaps some of them are going to go back on they are not the case, but we think that our labs regionally are enough confident to say it's cases.
Now, a few questions sent by email. The first is from Philotier, Montreal Gazette. What the testing results are showing, is it mostly older people? Can you break down the numbers by age group for us?
Yes, there is. I would say it's clear, and the numbers are still in validation, but I will give you the sense. It's getting more cases as old you are. The rates are getting higher on the older ones than the new ones. But also, it's normal. We'll have people of 30 to 45 years old with the disease, but they are not the ones that are going to be necessarily at the hospital. So as we're going to get this data more precisely, those figures are going to be showed and put in our website. But actually we need, because of this backlog of 200 cases, to get this information done. So, and it's normal, as the minister says, that at the beginning we see only the worst cases because they are the ones who go to hospital, they are the ones, but with more testing, with more knowledge, there's going to be a lot of people who will have coronavirus, they even will not know, and going to get protected.
And again, for Mr. Arruda, many people are feeling anxious, so any ideas on how to get a good night's sleep?
I think is to think that I would say perhaps what said the Prime Minister, if you're at home alone, you're protected. So just try to think that I'm very well in my bed, there is no virus around me. Let me put some music, have a cup of, not tea with tea, tisane or something, a good milk thing. Listen to music I'm not used to. Look to movies I haven't the time to see, and just relax.
But I would add also, get in touch with people.
Yes.
People will get in touch with you. I have example of people
Over the phone.
Over the phone. Yes, over the phone. People are getting in touch with people they haven't talked for many years, even many months. I mean, people are calling each other. That's great. And do a bit of exercise
And you
inside
can do,
your home.
Yes, and you can do on FaceTime, danse en ligne. Why not? You put music, you both are the same music, and you dance in the front of the FaceTime, and you repeat. That's all kinds of things you can do. And you know, you are creative, Quebec. We've got great talents. Just do something that makes you happy.
Next question is from Raquel Fletcher, Global News. The more tests there are, the more we know what the situation really is. So do you have a clear picture yet?
We got a clear picture for the moment that we are, you know, and we will get a clearer and clearer picture in the next weeks. And I would say even a more better picture after the crisis, because a lot of data precision is only made with specific studies after to look back at the situation. Actually, what we are doing is to act on the best evidence base and the best data that we can get today.
Okay, so Raquel is also asking, there still appears to be chaos on the ground for testing people and or getting results. What are you going to do to make it less chaotic?
Well, I think we're getting better. We're increasing our testing. You learned that today we opened a clinic at Quartier des Spectacles in Montreal. We're going to do a lot of testing there. And, you know, InfoSanté is doing okay. I mean, a few minutes wait and you get the line. So the clinics are increasing their volume. And the labs are ready to analyze even more tests. So we want to get all the equipment we need. And also I want to add the results, because I know that has been an issue. Now we've organized that nurses will be able to call you to give you your results when it's negative. So that's even more people who are going to be able to do it. Doctors will call you if it's positive. So that will change also, and we're very confident that on average 2 days you should get your results in the future.
Okay, and our last questions from CTV. There's a tent up outside Montreal Hospital now. Is this to more safely triage and test patients? And if so, what else have you changed since last week to increase protection for healthcare workers and the public?
Well, I think you're referring probably to Notre-Dame Hospital, if I'm not mistaken. I talked about Quartier des Spectacles, but that's something else. That is a way to do it, to separate a part of the hospital from the rest, where they would treat people with COVID-19. In terms of protecting our staff, we have, from day one, we have protocols that are implemented, and we are reinforcing it. We have the equipment. Our people, that's other people that I want to thank, people at the ministry and people in the different organizations who are making sure that we have the equipment. L'approvisionnement, all the people who are working, and we know we're in contact also with the private sector. I want to thank, we're very grateful for this effort so that we get our staff completely protected. There's no risk zero, I understand, but as much as possible protected.
And just to make it clear about Place des Festivals, is it an initiative by Montreal, or is it considered as your test center?
It's from the ministry. It's the CIUS who organized this, and we're looking at it very, very positively. I think there's going to be a lot of testing there, and we're going to evaluate as it goes the operations, but I think it's going well now.
That's it. Thank you very much. Merci tout le monde.
Thank you, everyone.